This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
Our award-winning show is back, and this season promises to be even more exciting than before. What's Up Doc isn't just a title, it's a call to action for anyone who wants to improve their health and well-being. Join us on this thrilling ride towards better health on WESN Content Capital.
WESN.
It's difficult to be optimistic. I didn't necessarily want to speak about it, but the fact of the matter is it's front page news. There's much to talk about. A young schoolgirl was found dead, I believe. There's very little known with regards to the cause of death and if there was any foul play involved. It's just one of those things. Tragedies like this, we need to understand something. It is not as though in a proper society we will get it to where things like this will never, ever happen. The question is it happening too much? Now, it's not as though I keep track of unexplained deaths like this and young people where usually the assumption is foul play. Usually, right? A medical reason would be even rarer than foul play. So usually the assumption is foul play. I don't count the number of times things like this appear in the news, and then that's what is reported, what we're told, what's out there in the public. But a statistical analysis is not necessarily helpful to the family involved, who is probably hoping for answers. And therein lies the other part of it. To what extent do we have too many deaths of this nature, where we believe foul play is involved, where it is a young person who, her life is basically 1/3 of my life, or a little bit more than that. We also have to wonder what happens too often, because statistically you have enough murders, some of them will be unexplained. Again, doesn't really make the family and friends of the deceased in that particular case or those particular cases feel any better to know that statistically it's just bound to happen if you have a certain amount of murders. If this is a murder, we have to wonder, not only is it that we have too many murders, but we have too many unexplained murders, too many unexplained deaths. There was an incident where a journalist, his family had to report to his workplace that he passed away. They discovered him. There's no suspicion of foul play. I had a friend pass away under similar situations. Seemed to be quite peaceful. He was discovered too late, don't have an autopsy, don't have a cause of death. No reason to believe it was foul play. These things happen. That's bad enough. But far too often do we have situations where we can't necessarily assume it was for benign reasons. And what is that left? Not just for the friends and family of the deceased in those cases, if there was foul play. What is it left for the rest of us now? I do wonder what it would be like being a young person in 2025, hearing about the deaths of other young people. Now, one of the things I do remember when I was going to secondary school, at some point in those 7 years, I did hear about another student particularly harming themselves or killing themselves. I'm pretty sure it happened at least once. And of course, the whole, that'll never happen to me, I won't do that. You know, like, because you don't necessarily, you're not going through something similar to what that person went through. You don't know. And also, you're a teenager. I was a teenager at the time. I didn't know any better. But what is it like now for young people to hear about the potential of other young people being murdered? Because then it's different. It wasn't a choice that that young person made. It was potentially something that was inflicted upon them. At what point is it too much? At what point will we as a society be willing to change? Saying it is easy. Describing it in detail is difficult. Implementing it is even harder. Tangentially, David Abdullah is warning to some extent what I've said before and maybe others, but it's important that it not be a forgotten part of the discussion. So I'm grateful that he brought this up again. The responsibility for securing TNT against criminals, I'm paraphrasing, falls on the state. The policy of stand your ground begins to shift. That's a good way of putting it. That responsibility away from the state and places it on individual citizens. That's a good way of putting it. This is citizens becoming an adjunct armed element. We need to consider the implications of this shift carefully. And he points to the US, and he points to the gun violence level in the US, which, here's where he may lose me a little bit, because if you really want to go into the weeds, a lot of the areas where gun rights are championed are not necessarily the areas with the highest degree of gun violence. And a lot of the more controversial aspects of gun ownership are not statistically the most or the largest number, the culprit with the largest number of deaths or murders attributed to it. I'm speaking about rifles or assault rifles versus handguns. America has a very complicated relationship with firearms. But to some extent, looking at our culture, they have their culture behind the use of guns, their culture with regards to the factors that determine what parts of the country are violent or not, in what ways, what motivates violence, which differs from state to state, city to city, at least in varying degrees. We have our own factors. And while I am nowhere near expert enough to have an opinion with any degree of finality over American gun laws, we have a situation where we are not accustomed, nor do we have a culture of owning guns to that extent. So the implication of widening it human beings are varied and multifaceted and complex creatures that have a lot of differences. As much as we have similarities, it doesn't take much to really make us see miles apart. First of all, you have a tool. There's a tendency. If you have a problem, I'll solve it with that tool. Case in point, a soldier and a police officer had a dispute over a woman. The report didn't say what the dispute was. It just said a domestic dispute involving a woman. And then the report said the officer, who is assigned to a specialist tactical unit, so this is not just a run-of-the-mill police officer, he drew his licensed firearm and shot the soldier. Now, I don't know what the soldier may have said, may not have said, may have done, may not have done. So there may be more to the story, or it might just be that this police officer decided, as an adult who should know better, to not use his words, to not even use his fists, but to escalate straight to his handgun. If that is and it's anecdotal, so it's not to say that guaranteed statistically a certain number of arguments, people will pull out their firearms in order to settle it with gun violence. There's no formula for that, or at least I'm not implying that right now, right? You could use results-based analysis to calculate ratios of if and when it happens, but to predict and say that it will be sure to happen just because they get firearms, a certain amount or whatever the amount might be, no, you can't do that. But what you can say is, well, once access is increased, there is a greater chance that this could happen, just based on the fact that now more people might have access. One of the things that is not explained, and this is where the government is doing itself a great disservice, you have stand your ground laws, which does not necessarily mean you have to stand your ground with a gun. But what did the Prime Minister do when she started this part of her political campaigning, which was well before the elections were announced? She said, empty the matic, empty the clip. She used gun talk, basically, which went down well with people that wanted to hear, passion. The problem is the content of it and the implications. We're now starting to see people don't necessarily want to actually see physical implications of talk like that come to fruition. More on that later on in the show. And I wonder now if the current government has thought it out. Because stand your ground, the implication is, and look, Minister Stage went so far as to say, shoot people who claim to be police if you doubt they're police, and ask questions later. And if you have to face trial, face trial. Better to face trial than to face a coffin. Yeah, the police love that, right? Like, that's how far the gun talk went from the government. The implied follow-up is more FULs. But what if the you know, they are responsible on the FUL front. Yes, the process is made more streamlined and smoother. You're not necessarily burdened with unnecessary delays, but they don't actually open up the floodgates and give out guns to everybody. Then I'm fairly certain a lot of people will start to think, what's the point of this stand your ground law? You want me to fight off 4 men with a broomstick? They have guns. I need guns if I'm even gonna have a chance to fight them off. So the unstated implication, maybe they were testing the waters. You see, if you leave things unclear, undefined, if you don't show the shark until later on in the movie, the audience, they build up the image of the shark in Jaws throughout the first 2/3 of the movie in their minds, the horror of the unknown. If you have a promise, but you don't necessarily spell out the promise in detail, people will fill in with their expectations of what they think is reasonable to assume will happen. And then, to some extent, the government could say, if those promises potentially are too far and the majority of the population wants to say, no mas, they could say, oh, we never actually promised that. We just have stand your ground legislation. We were never going to change the rules and regulations of how you access firearms. Drug money might be cut soon. I have heard a warning. Home invasions and robberies, we might see an uptick if we haven't seen an uptick already. Home invasions, you might see an uptick. Might, right? I don't know what the statistics are. Now is the government telling people to stand their ground with kitchen knives, or batons, or cutlasses, or garden shears, or whatever improvised melee weapon you could find? How exactly is this legislation supposed to work? Because based on what some politicians have said, they never speak about stand your ground legislation as it relates to not having a firearm. They don't. As much as it's technically not limited to firearm usage alone, I believe, more or less, a lot, if not all of the government communication on stand your ground is about empty-matic use of firearms. Or at least it's implied in a very slick way. But then now, if the guns are given out, police officer who not only has training in firearms, like a soldier, but one would think a police officer also has a certain amount of training with regards to how to use that firearm responsibly. Now, with a soldier, it's not quite the same. Yes, they'll have firearm safety, but to actually utilize their firearm in a civilian space, that's not something they're supposed to do. Not without careful consideration by their superiors who will have to authorize it. But a police officer is different. As an agent in the state, in order to uphold the law and to, if necessary, confront violent criminals, he's supposed to have a bit more training in when and when not to. And also a bit of training to identify how to spot lawbreakers, right? So to some extent, he should have a significantly greater amount of training than a soldier with regards to if his actions might break the law or not. And he pulled the gun and shot the soldier anyway. Again, I don't know if the soldier was posturing, threatening, what have you. The report doesn't say. So he has the training. He should know better. He fired. Maybe he had cause, maybe he didn't. The implication right now is, the speculation is he didn't. If that is true, Mr. Abdullah's warnings, I think, As much as that is an anecdotal example, I think Mr. Abdullah's warnings, this is something we need to heed. The implications, it sounds good until it starts to get tested in the real world, whether directly or indirectly, whether by cases that are directly attributed to the scenario that we're speaking of, or cases that are indirectly connected and indirectly might set precedents or expose precedents. Just one last thing, I'll mention it and then we'll take a break. The Communication Workers Union, they are bringing up concerns with regards to what might be an executive or changes of the executive at the SET. Now, maybe I missed it, but I haven't necessarily seen a lot of detailed communication on some of these personnel changes, right? People are left to speculate on the board changes and what they mean and the motives and motivations of them. I don't necessarily want to assume the worst, but a lack of proactive leadership and communication on this matter to manage and to some extent temper expectations, to explain strategic decisions. I think at some point, our leaders really need to understand that if you are running your organization in such a manner, to some extent, that's fine. It's your organization, whether it's a political party or your privately owned business. If you want to do it that way, that's fine. But once you grow and involve more stakeholders that are public, the less right you have to do it as you see fit, unaccountable to anybody. And at the end of the day, it's not a simple task, but one of the things that shows the public that you are willing to account for your decisions is to do everything you can and to take great pains to ensure as much transparency as possible and as much accountability, therefore, as possible. Through communications, through explanation, allowing the public to scrutinize your work, allowing a third party that hopefully will be independent, if necessary, to scrutinize what's going on if it's sensitive. To put it another way, to risk negative press. That's basically what it is. It seems as though too many politicians are far too comfortable thinking, I don't want negative press, therefore it is easier for me to hide things. Because by their reckoning, it's not that serious. But if it was not that serious, then why do you need to hide things? And what it does is it makes you wonder, as smart as these people are, why is it that they seem to not be that smart? And they make obvious decisions that are obviously coming with pitfalls and negative consequences. I mean, it's obvious to me just looking at the news. Hey, don't act like that. Don't just do things, don't explain, come up with some very thin excuse, you know, a day later, come up with a very thin countermeasure or follow-up measure a day after that, you know, and then that measure is delayed. Look how long it took the previous administration to even try to give the families of the Paya tragedy anything. And they couldn't even do that within 4 weeks before the election. They couldn't even settle that. Things like that work against you with regards to how the public perceives you. You had, I would have thought, As Saladin said to Rinaldo Chatillon, oh no, it's Guy de Lusignan, I would have thought you would have been close enough and paid attention to the people that was in a position before you, in this case, to know what not to do. You yourself was part of the criticism with regards to the previous government. Don't do things like this. Why do things like this? Or is it that I'm just attributing certain positions that you actually did not take because you knew that you wanted to do similar actions, behave in similar manners? I mean, I don't know. At this point now, we have reached the point where I am looking at politics in this country and it's not operating in a logical way, and I am left bewildered and disappointed. Not necessarily lost all hope yet, but I am at this point more pessimistic than optimistic. I'm stubbornly, however, hoping to be proven wrong, but that generally tends to not happen in this job. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to daily review. TTPS had a major leak. Well, minor leak, depends on your point of view. But the commissioner is not happy about it. More about that after this. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Claudette, radiographer at the radiology departments at the community hospital. We offer high-quality service with state-of-the-art equipment in X-ray, ultrasound, CT, and mammogram. Come, our friendly staff awaits you.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
You'd be surprised, a lot of the patients who present to us with infection in their feet, the infection would have started several days before. Now, the interesting thing is, neuropathy usually goes hand in hand with peripheral arterial disease. So these patients lose the sensation to feel. Now, they may have the ability to have crude touch or general sensation, but that fine sensation, for instance, when a needle sticks them or a thumbtack sticks them, they would lose that sensation.
Correct.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
Okay, so the top story that I have for you today is linked to the questions with regards to the personnel decisions made by the Commissioner of Police. Now, it's not necessarily has anything to do with the reshuffling of the executive of the police. It's more about the leave of ACP Wayne Meister. Because what seemingly has happened is that a member of the TTPS leaked documents that had a record of the accumulated leave of other officers of the same rank, other ACPs. 4 senior officers with had more backup leave than Meister. According to the documents leaked, one assistant commissioner of police had 28 months, while a senior superintendent had 25 months. And of course, it goes hand in hand with the question I had. It's not as though he reached the limit, and as he reached the limit, he was sent on leave. He has 16 months. He's on, well, I assume it's 16 months. I'm not entirely sure if it is only 16 months of leave that he had accrued. Here you have other senior officers in a similar situation. Now, we don't necessarily know what the strategies are. And the commissioner, he had strong language on this situation. When a disgruntled officer chooses to masquerade as a whistleblower, armed only with vacation leave spreadsheets and wounded pride, it is less an act of courage and more akin to a tantrum in uniform. Because the implication of the information is, and the commissioner says this act is not whistleblowing, it's outright sabotage, right? Well, I get it. When you see information like this and release it to the public with no other context, what are people going to think? People are going to think they sent Meister on leave, but look, they have other officers, ACP, senior superintendent, with even more leave that are not being sent on leave. The commissioner has a plan, apparently. So there's a lot of statements quoted by him. And the implication is this is undermining whatever his intentions are with regards to the strategic planning of personnel in the police service, right? The decision to have the officer proceed on his accumulated leave was done so in accordance with his lawful entitlements and in alignment with strategic planning and not as a result of personal targeting. Now, one of the reports stated the blogger who conducted the leak actually online or released it to the public or published it, apparently tried to find out if Meister was okay, and it seemed as though he was carrying out his duties as normal, or at least up until whoever she contacted, they observed him in his workplace. So there were no signs that he was in any emotional distress or anything like that, which actually does lend weight to the commissioner's claims. But the long and short is, I think this is the situation. And he also, I can't find the quote, but he also has a line that if it didn't outright mean it, it implied to me that there were certain aspects of how senior officers were going to be deployed. In this case, who goes on leave and when, that he may not wanted out in the public. Here's the thing. You don't necessarily have to give out the details to say your plans. There's a difference to saying we're going to increase our presence as opposed to we're going to have patrols on this street corner, this street corner, this street corner, this street corner, 24/7. See, one says a general intent, which would probably be observable by the public within the first 24 to 48 hours anyway. The other one is giving away actual specific details of the operation. You could say, this is my policy now to treat with senior officers, so don't be alarmed if you see senior officers be sent on leave in the future, as opposed to giving out details on which senior officer and how you plan and intend to do it. Because at some point, the public will pick up on the fact that certain people might be on vacation when, I don't know, they go on vacation. Definitely criminals will probably figure it out even if the general public doesn't. So trying to keep all of these secrets, which is quite, it's a little funny when you think about it, because it's not as though we are known to run tight ships and hold everything close to our vest. That's culturally not where we just be operate, right? I understand wanting to do it, but I do wonder if you're trying too hard to accomplish something when, if you knew how to communicate without necessarily revealing details and information, then this wouldn't have been a thing. Part of the issue is your explanation came after the fact, and part of the issue is for a public that's accustomed to getting explanations after the fact that are usually not acceptable, like the government, it's not necessarily fair, but you are paying the price of a situation that you have met. A jaded public that doesn't necessarily want to just give the benefit of the doubt just because you say so. Now, you might get more benefit of the doubt than others because you don't necessarily have baggage, you don't have a negative track record, and you haven't done anything outright to cause people to dislike you or discredit you. But society is distrustful of certain things. Understanding how to navigate so you could avoid appearing like or being associated with those things. You may not like office politics, you may engage in it freely or willingly. Regardless of your stance on optics and politics and the like and perception, you can't run away from it because we're talking about, in this case, how the public perceives both you and the service. And at the end of the day, you left enough room for what you described as a disgruntled officer to do something that you described as sabotage, you described as sowing discord. Strategic planning, in part, is to anticipate things like this and prevent them by not giving anyone the opportunity to do something like what the officer who leaked the document did. And everything I just said there also applies to the government. But I have less faith in politicians because they operate on a very different mindset when it comes to public relations and public communications. Now, let's go to the recurring situation or the ongoing source of tension in the region, that is the US-Venezuela dispute, right? Now, it's come out that US senators, they are taking the United States president to task over his war on drugs because it's military action that is not approved by Congress. Now, the thing is, the president does have a bit of leeway with regards to military action. One of the things about using Marines is I do believe he has a bit more leeway without Congress's approval on limited deployments and actions by Marines. The other thing is, and this goes back to a situation from a couple years ago, when Gary Griffith wanted to use local terrorism laws because he needed better legislation, or he needed legislation that will give him more, I don't know, whether it is leeway, more bite, what have you, to deal with violent crime in TNT. And I said no, because if it's not actually terrorism and you open that door, there might be unintended consequences because that label comes with a lot of baggage. And this is essentially an extreme example of one of the things that I was afraid of. Terrorism is different to street crime. The response by a state and the amount of violence it could use to respond to terrorism is greater than street crime. And now Donald Trump is pushing the limits of that. He's pushing the limits of that because technically he is not engaging, or he is publicly claimed to not be engaging in military actions against the state of Venezuela, but rather against criminals whose conduct are now, he claims to be, terrorism. A claim that on a basic level, you could at least see the arguments to be debated, not necessarily guaranteed that a court will agree with him. And in fact, I won't be surprised if the courts don't agree with him. But it's one of those things where I don't think this has been tested, and I'm not willing to say which way a judge, any judge, will go on a matter like this, right? Obviously, if it's the Supreme Court of Venezuela, we know where they will go, right? Now, Professor Andy Knight, now just, sorry, before I forget, one of the things with regards to what the Americans are doing, 2 senators are now, they introduced a joint resolution under the War Powers Act calling the U.S. to stop engaging in military hostilities that have not been authorized by Congress. Again, I don't know if to what extent they will be able to use that to stop Donald Trump from doing what he's doing. I think one of the key points for better ways is that these are 2 Democratic senators. It's the opposition, right? To what extent does that hold weight? If we saw a Republican come out, that would have a lot more weight. Now, Professor Andy Knight, he's come out to say that perhaps the Prime Minister might be on the wrong side of history. And I would say, is she on the wrong side of history on this? Or is it on the wrong side of politics? Now, to some extent, though, I do understand what he's saying because, or I might not necessarily agree fully with him, but I will agree that the Prime Minister, I believe this, I have been told, and I believe this is true, this is not international diplomacy, this is international politics. Everybody has their agenda. I don't necessarily know why she's expressing her agenda the way that she is. And there's going to be a lot of potential consequences and fallout that we might not necessarily be able to anticipate. Right? Now, there's a couple of things I just want to say before we take the break. First of all, Venezuela has been saying the first strike was fake, which, again, either you condemn the Americans for doing a thing or you condemn them for faking a thing. But you can't condemn them for killing people and then faking they kill those people at the same time. So one of the clues with regards to the side of history, I don't think it's clear-cut what the right side will be, and I think this issue will be a lot more muddied even in hindsight. But one of the first clues is the Venezuelans don't have a consistent message with regards to their criticisms of the Americans. They have a contradicting message. The other 2 things are this. First, well, the other thing is this. They have launched an exercise with what is their version of a National Guard. So it's kind of like National Guard, military police. It's not, I believe, their main military. To deal with gun smuggling and weapon smuggling and human trafficking from Trinidad and Tobago. Now, I'll be honest, there potentially is some illegal contraband going from Trinidad and to Venezuela. I'm not saying that it's impossible. We do, however, expect the bulk of the smuggling coming in the other direction. It's our borders that are open and free, and generally speaking, the flow of stuff, including drugs, goes northward, doesn't go southward. And in fact, with regards to the guns, from what I've been told in a lot of cases, the guns, some of the guns are even the weapons used to escort the drugs. They don't send it back. It doesn't matter to them. It's not worth it to send it back. Right? But I don't know with regards to conditions and what they change. They claim RPGs are being smuggled in from Trinidad to go into Venezuela. If that is true, that means RPGs are making it here on TNT soil. To some extent, here's the rub. If that is true, that potentially gives more weight to the security threats to our government and gives more weight to the fact that the transnational crime in this immediate area of our vicinity is on the cusp, if not already, in the realm of terrorism. Here's the thing. They're claiming we're the source of the crime problem. Before this, we claimed they were the source of the illegal stuff coming into our country. I wonder if perhaps Venezuela is hoping that America takes a shot at one of their Guardia Nacional boats. I doubt that would happen. If you know what you're doing, you're not going to make that mistake. Of course, the American military does not always know what it's doing, to be fair. But the claims that Venezuela is making is not in line with the reality as how even the critics of America from Trinidad, I believe, I assume, would see it. And that makes me wonder exactly what is it that they think is happening and what do they hope to achieve, because before the Americans came down here, they started blaming us for crime. And I think that they have been overplaying their hand, ironically, but that part of it is generally being ignored by most people. We could blame the Prime Minister for how what kind of messaging she's sending out, but no one is analyzing the messaging coming from the Venezuelan government. It seems as though everybody seems to be more than happy to just take it at face value. And for that, I don't know, because if you are just believing them and everything that they say, then when they rattle the sabers on Guyana's door, perhaps you should believe that too. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll welcome the ASP. Stay tuned.
Low energy? Heart concerns? Migraines slowing you down? It's time to take control of your health. Join Wellness Unlocked, the series that brings expert advice and real solutions for a healthier you. In our latest episode, learn how Jameson CoQ10 can help support heart health, boost energy, and even reduce migraines. Get the science, the stories, and the steps to power up your health with CoQ10. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and start your wellness journey today.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada in spite of the obvious difference in size.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful. The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break a balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put
Why
forever.
you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
No, let's go to the last part.
I'm back here talking about the WSND Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by acting ASP Christopher Roon, TTBS Media Ambassador, Talking Point. Welcome back once again.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Good day to you and your staff and your colleagues.
You're really taking the boys in blue kind of seriously now.
Yes, and sometimes you have to do that.
Okay.
Well, I mean, in policing, you always have to be serious. Today, we just dressed in the part.
Right.
Yeah. So today we came to talk about community policing in throughout Trinidad and Tobago and the efforts that the community policing unit, the CPU, does make to assist neighborhoods to be safer, get that information out there, work with communities to set up watch groups and whatnot. And it does seem to be working to some extent amongst the communities that have adopted the practice.
And right now, when at least last that I heard, murders are significantly down, right?
Yeah.
Whether from the state of emergencies, police action, or a combination of factors,
Yeah.
it's down, which means that the crimes to be probably more wary of at this point are home invasions, robberies, suspicious people casing your property, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And these are things that are neighborhood watch and community policing.
Yeah.
It's more up their alley, right?
Yeah, of course.
The part that's not really always going to be helpful with, violent crimes and stuff.
Yeah.
That's hopefully down.
Yeah.
And now to protect yourself from the practical threats right now in September 2025, this is one of those big steps.
Yeah, of course, it does work. It does seem to work. I remember when I was in charge of the CID in Cunupia, we worked together with the community, and we were able to make a significant dent in crime when it came, because the community sent information to us, anonymously, of course. And we were able to detect a number of offenses, including housebreaking, in the sense that the perpetrators, there were two perpetrators who lived in the community. However, they were using a vehicle, like a high-end vehicle,
right,
a SUV, high-end vehicle, and they would go around the community, parking up, scoping out, and then when persons left, and they were successful for some time because nobody suspected that a high-end vehicle would be used in such offenses.
Right, it was like camouflage.
It was a camouflage, and we have to understand that crime evolves.
Question, did they steal that vehicle or did they?
No, they actually, I think they rented it. If I can remember well, they rented it.
Was it a rental with an R license plate?
No, it's a private hire. Yeah, so it was a private rental,
right,
and they used it and they scoped out what we call recognizance. They paid recognizance to the community, and they went around at different times, especially during the day when people went to work.
Yes.
And some of the communities in Cunupia are very quiet, and sometimes they hardly have people home. And we were able to bust them, and we were able to get them to confess to a number of robberies.
Right.
House break-ins and larcenies. On other occasions, I remember we got some information. This was the guy was from outside of the community, but he rented an apartment in a high-end part of Cunupia, and he housed narcotics and ammunition. I remember, I think it was 700 rounds of ammunition we got in that apartment. Based on information received from the community, because they suspected that because his hours weren't too for want of a Catholic, it wasn't normal hours.
Right,
He was in and out. So he was using it as a station.
It was a 9 to 5,
No.
8 to 4.
No, he wasn't spending overnight. He would come with different people at different times of the night. And one night, the community got suspicious. And again, they contacted the police and we worked together with the community and we were able to track him down.
And that's another thing, because the community police, they will help engage with neighborhood watch groups.
Yes.
That's also an avenue for communication, potentially, where you could now maybe ask for advice. And I say that because that last case in particular, well, in both cases, because they rented a high-end vehicle.
Right.
To some extent now.
A high-end apartment.
Right. In case of the vehicle, the owner probably doesn't know their vehicle might be involved, right?
No.
And it's important to know because you could get in trouble for this. Same thing with the apartment now, right? If the police investigation does not necessarily point to evidence to clear the owner, that would be a reasonable suspicion. Is the owner involved? Because who rents the apartment to be used like this? This is not normal.
Exactly.
And for landlords, because I know of another situation where there was similar fares, right? I think the point is you kind of put your place to rent on the market, you get a realtor, and through a lot of third parties, you end up getting...
Yeah, and the public is invited to visit the police station, speak with community policing departments, and even if your station doesn't have one, you speak to the inspector or the sergeant in charge, and you ask them for assistance. They could probably even vet the name for you. It isn't a complicated thing for the police to do, and they could probably assist with that. Recently I saw, and you've seen a prevalence of what we spoke about in the marketplace. I think recently Caroni Police Station had an incident where they went to Caroni Police Station, the two parties, and they were stole fake jewelry.
Right.
Yeah. Now remember, the police aren't jewelers to test it for you. So you have to understand, not just because you're using the compound. So
I don't understand. Like, hold on. It said brazenness?
It is, yes.
Or foolishness?
It's both.
I'm going to try to basically con someone with fake jewelry in a fraudulent sale. You said in the police station?
Well, on the compound.
On the compound. Yeah. How is it that the buyer figured it out? Who figured it out?
Well, yeah, the buyer went to afterwards they went to the jewelry store, to have it tested, and it was proven to be false.
Well,
fake jewelry.
It's good that the buyer...
No, but it's something you would want to do beforehand.
Before, I guess.
Yeah. I think it was close to $20,000 in jewelry.
Were the perpetrators caught or?
Not as yet, no.
Okay.
But I mean, it should be simple enough.
Because it's kind of hard to be anonymous if you did it
in the police station.
In the police
or
station.
The compound. Yeah. Well, we have cameras in all police stations.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's it. I mean, I don't think a jewelry store would appreciate you trying to conduct a transaction in the store. So it's tricky, right?
It's tricky, yeah. But anything. So on that note, we did pick up on cases where jewelry was sold. So what the suspect does, he would have two pockets in his pants. Inside the same side. So he would have two pieces of jewelry. He would have the original jewelry and he would have the fake jewelry. And this was a case in Port of Spain where they would sell you, so they'd tell you, listen, we have a bureau for sale for $100. They would take you to the jewelry store close by, and they would push their hands in their pocket, pull out the correct bureau, gold, have it tested. Yeah, it's gold. Okay, let's have the transaction. They leave and they go outside. He pushes back the jewelry in his pocket, takes all the fake one now and sells it to you. So this was something we picked up on in Port of Spain.
I mean,
yeah. So you have to really be careful when it comes to the expertise part of your sale and your exchange.
It's one of those things where I think most people might actually pick up on it left my sight.
Right.
But even though they're wary, they will fall short of in kind of like making a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to seem like you're a wuss, so it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where we can't underestimate the cunning of the criminal to find a way to scam you, con you, cheat you, etc., etc.
There's a number of ways that they do it. But coming back to community policing, of course, you know, the watch groups have been working very hard and does seem to be working. We have a lot of information coming. So the community policing officers goes into the community, and when they venture into the community, they have town meetings, they have workshops. They have an educational drive. When I was in Special Victims Department, we would also use this avenue of educating persons in the community of their rights, the rights of a child, the rights of a victim, and whatnot. And we were able to have holistic community groups that, or lectures and conferences that could have assisted the community.
Now,
and we saw benefits in that.
I think for most suburban areas and urban areas, to some extent, this is, maybe people might not fully realize all the benefits, all the details, right, of how this can be utilized, but it's kind of known. But for more rural areas, because we just had in the papers the unfortunate death, I believe everyone is kind of assuming that it was by foul play. A 14-year-old girl was found dead close by a trail, which she and her peers would traverse, she would use to get home, right? I think no one is thinking it's a natural death right now, right? Because of her age. My point is, there's a lot of questions with regards to just what happened. With regards to a rural communities more spread out, you know, you can't necessarily, there's a lot of, depending on the location, a lot of bush forests, you know, you don't have a good line of sight to everybody. You might know everybody, but it's not quite the same of like one street where you could see and hear what goes on the street.
And these rural communities are prone to criminal behavior and criminal acts. For example, including, I mean, condolences to the family of that child, but including, I remember there was a case where this couple was driving around and tendering false money, counterfeit money, to these parlors. So they would go and they would purchase something for 100 TT. And it turned out to be 100 fake dollars, TT currency. And what the lady did, she called us, the police, and then she would have also communicated with the other parlors in the district and the shops in the district and whatnot to be on the lookout. I mean, they eventually left the district without us picking them up, but nonetheless.
But still, it was, you know, they were able to warn each other.
Warn each other.
And that's the thing, like, I think perhaps rural communities might not necessarily think, oh, well, yeah, community watch groups and community police, you know, it's different here, we can't have that here. But that's not entirely true. You could still help each other out and have each other's back.
Right, and one point to note, though, that even though the community policing units set up the what we call the town meetings in such a way that you come and you express some issues you might have with the police or the community. We don't expect you to give us information openly at the town meetings, of course. I mean, there are other people that may come just to hear that and pinpoint you as a
similar to, they could pinpoint your transactions in the bank when you withdraw money. They could pinpoint you if you want to make a complaint or give out information.
So I would recommend that if you have information and you want to secretly hand it over to the police, you do so. You will have that conversation with the officers in person. You have the 555, you have the 999, you have the 800 tips. You can utilize those avenues. So the purpose of the town meetings is to really hear your concerns. So your concerns might just simply be, you know, there are a number of drug blocks in the area and we need to do something about it. Youth unemployment in the area, we need to do something about it, because generally my experience has been that with the town meetings is that they have a plethora of issues, including roads, water, electricity, services rendered by, you know, government officials, government departments and institutions, and we sometimes are able to work with them to assist communities like this.
Right, but then also it's a way for the community to meet the police, for you all to meet the community, and just to hand out numbers and names, right, to facilitate. Or when you have information now, it could be a more direct way and private way.
I remember going to New Jersey once, and on that occasion, I visited a police station, and one of the officers, forgot his name, he had like a picture of himself, like a baseball card. So when he visited schools as a community-oriented policing officer, he would issue these baseball cards, for want of a better word, these cards with his picture on it, to generate popularity in the sense of, you know, this is me, I am so-and-so, you know, and the kids were really into it. They wanted to collect these cards, you know, of the officers, and I don't know if we could work here, but nonetheless, they seem to be selling themselves as community officers and somebody you could interact with on a personal level.
Some officers might have a card, like a business card.
Of course, I do, yeah.
But the key is, it doesn't have your picture.
No.
So then we know that in other areas, criminals have impersonated people, right?
Correct, yeah.
And that is not limited, that includes police officers.
Yeah.
But if the photo is with the name on the card,
Right.
all of a sudden somebody that doesn't look anything like you can't say, yes, I am ASP Arun,
Right.
and try to use that as a way to get in.
It's expensive, I guess, so.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
I mean, there's pros and cons, but it goes back down to, that's why the town meeting might be so important, because
course,
then it's not just the name of the officer, like you see names of officers in the papers.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily allow you to get an idea, a connection of who this person is.
Correct.
But when you meet the officers as a community in a town meeting, and you could, even if it's just to you know, trade a few words, get a feel.
It gives the police a face for you
Yes.
to connect with. So you may not know every police officer in a police station or in a what we call a division. So Central Division would be Chaguanas, Caroni, Cunupia, Couva, and whatnot. You may not know every officer, but you would know that the face of the police are these community policing officers. You have a connection with them, and you can go to them with your issues.
But then also, it's a simple thing, right? I mean, it goes back to why schools take roll call, why certain establishments, you know, you have to sign in so that there's a record, right, of who. Now with a community, to some extent, by being present and introducing yourself to the police, now the police, you have an idea about the police, but now the community police has an idea about you. So they know, well, hey, I know you, you, and you, but you seem new, and you're acting suspicious, right?
Correct,
so now we, you know, we start checking out some boxes. Maybe we need to make some inquiries.
I've seen officers, I've seen officers, including the task force and the IETF and whatnot, get information that led to the arrest and the seizure of narcotics and firearms. I'm talking about AK-47s and whatnot, based on work done by the community policing officers.
Right.
So it's an avenue that you can utilize as a personal interaction.
That's the thing. Yes, they might have some stuff stashed away in the bush. Yes, they might have some stuff stashed away in a warehouse, but then some of it will be stashed away in a rental or abandoned house or just some nondescript house of a family member of one of the gang members.
I know yesterday or Saturday, Northeastern Division was able to, Northeastern Division is Morva and whatnot, that district, Sawa, and they were able to seize, I think, some 9mm ammunition, some narcotics, based on in abandoned places. So we have information coming to us, and it's the effort made by these community policing officers that assist us.
And I think that's one of the other things that we might not always put two and two together on the risk, right? If stuff is being stashed in an abandoned building, now depending, granted, it's not as much of a risk now in 2025 as before, but you know, kids like to explore. Like to, and abandoned buildings. So now there's no rules here, right? The problem is if there's criminal activity in the same spot now and you see something you're not supposed to see, right? That could be a serious risk. Or what if, you know, you have homeless people or just drug users using the house as a place, I can't do it in front of my family, I can't do it in front of my kids or my parents, but there's an abandoned house, I could do it here. Right?
And what we have done, community policing has done with those issues, because we had cases where even victims of rape and sexual offenses were taken into these abandoned places. And affected. And we were able to work with the corporation to have it cleaned up, broken down, closed up, whatnot, so that it could not be utilized by any member of the public unnecessarily or unauthorized.
And I think people need to stop underestimating basic measures like information, records, you know, cameras, light, so that things can be seen and exposed, right? The whole idea is once things are known, it's harder for the criminals to operate.
Especially on the point of lighting. I remember when I was working on the field, not in management now, but when I was on the field, and we would respond to a report, it was very difficult to pinpoint the location, because sometimes you're on the phone with the informant or the victim or the witness, and they're telling you where you're coming or where you're going, but there's no lights outside. I mean, it was an observation on my part that wherever we went in these rural districts, there wasn't enough lighting conditions.
Well, maybe that's why they were targeted.
Maybe.
Right? So it's like, yes, it's an easier victim because it's harder for the neighbors to observe me, it's harder for the homeowner to observe me, it's harder for the cameras, and even passing police.
And that's why we keep saying, make it harder for to be a target for these criminals.
Because let's just say it's a street, right?
Yeah.
There's 20 houses on the street, 10 to 20 houses on the street. You know something's going on the street because someone told you something's going on the street. But if you can't pinpoint the house, can the police go house to house now? Like, what is the value of that?
I remember in some cases, we found the house, and it was in total darkness still. And they were the victims of crime in the home. And they would not put on the light for no reason. We would have to, you keep on a light, have the downstairs light put on, we would like to come in and whatnot.
Do people not have lights because of their light bills?
I think I don't know. I get the impression it was because of the light bills, because they don't have enough lighting conditions or lights around their home. And we need to practice or be proactive in how we secure our property. We talk about fences, doors, locks, alarms, cameras, lights.
Because at least some of these things, like having a couple of security lights, having padlocks, compared to, well, they took the microwave, or they took the TV, or they took the laptop, or they took the phones.
Yeah, and in some cases, the witnesses in the community weren't able to assist because the lights was off. They came downstairs. There wasn't any.
You just saw a dark shadow move.
Correct.
Right? Yeah. You might not even be able to estimate how tall the shadow was, right? Much less what race the shadow was, much less what they actually look like, because
K9 was of no use.
Right. Oh boy. Yeah, I think, I mean, you could take a minority demographic in the country, like say European Caucasian. Not that it happens, but even then, if there's not enough light, that's not going to help you narrow it down any, right? Oh, okay, it was a white boy. That's good. Right, yeah. It's not like we only have one, right? And you just go to that person,
But
right?
the point of bringing up that topic is because it's what we want to address when we come to the town meetings and when we give that service of community policing. One avenue of the community policing that works well too is in terms of supervision of minors. In the sense that you have a minor that's interested in becoming part of the police youth club. The community policing units normally spearhead the youth clubs. So you have supervision at the end of the day, at the end of school, with schoolwork, with homework, with just having an interaction with police officers, carrying them on. We spoke about it before, the excursions, being involved in activities, having them come off the street, having them not wander around unnecessarily and whatnot. So, we see benefits of that aspect of community policing.
But also there might be another benefit that I'm not too sure a lot of consideration is given, because a lot of people, especially if you look at foreign media, there's a lot of distrust with the police.
Yeah.
But if they're in the police youth club and they interact with police,
yeah, of course,
now all of a sudden,
better. Yeah.
Right? And let's just say they end up still having a negative interaction. First of all, the police are not just mysterious boogeyman of which they, some mythical figure they know nothing about. And they know other officers that at the very least who could, first of all, kind of explain to them whatever questions they may have beforehand and afterwards, right? Because a lot of it is, and we say it all the time, it's not that the bad interactions are just because some police officer is just out there to mistreat the people, but it's going to build up in most cases from something.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We do still have police officers that still do not know how to speak to people.
Yeah.
We have been working on that since the previous commissioners had mandated that we undertake customer service training. I think all police officers went under that training, if I'm not mistaken. Even with this commissioner of police, he has very little tolerance for misbehavior or disrespect or intolerance to members of the public and whatnot. So we do have officers that's still learning. We're hoping that we could overcome those issues.
But my point is more interaction will make it, there's less fear.
But it's a duplicated process in the sense that it's a two-sided process.
Yes, and it works both ways.
Yes, because you have the officers understanding what the community needs. And you have the community, yeah, exactly. So an officer who may not understand, because I grew up in a rural district, then I came to Port of Spain to work. And it was like, I was like 20 years old as a
Yeah.
police officer.
Yeah.
This is a totally different community I'm working in. It was a big shock to me how the difference in culture, the difference in interactions. You know, when the police stop in a rural community, you stop.
Because that's the other thing. I think when people essentially they go long distances in the country, they're accustomed to things. There might be a system in Port of Spain.
Correct.
But you're in Mayara right now, or you're in Toca right
Yeah.
now, or you're in Rio Clara right now. Like you're not in the same spot. The police said nobody knows you.
Exactly.
Right? So it's not
They
even
have no reason to trust you.
Right. It's not even just about trust. It's like you're just moving in a way that's different.
Yeah.
Right? And you might be moving in a way that might actually not just break norms, but even, you know, depending on the traffic laws or whatever, you might be doing something wrong. Right? And yeah, they don't know. And the police, it's not that you're different so they suspect you, but rather culturally, how you behave is different.
Yeah.
So human nature is, if you're behaving differently, it might be interpreted the wrong way.
Right.
What might be insulting to someone from Port of Spain might not be as insulting to someone from South.
Yeah, exactly.
And the police officers are just as human as everybody else.
Exactly, and their interaction is based on how they're brought up, their culture and whatnot. And you know, the point I was trying to make too is that it took me some time, but I was able to learn the district. I was able to learn the culture. I was able to interact better with persons in Port of Spain as opposed to my community.
And I guess one of the things with community policing is if you're exposed to more officers, you might interact more with young officers, because it's not something that people would think, oh my gosh, Trinidad is so big, you know, like we're going to be different culturally. But to some extent, if you really think about it, we are, right? So the norms and the tempo, and it's going to be different.
Right.
And if more people could see the more human side of the police to understand that, hey, we can't treat them like robots at the end of the day. When you meet random young officer, you know, on the other side of the country, that you don't know him, they don't know you, at least you would have an appreciation of, okay, this person might not understand where I'm coming from if I use slang from Port of Spain or Woodbrook, right? Because even it might be the same way, they mean different things.
Correct, yeah.
Right? Like there's slang in the north that means something very different than slang in San Fernando, right? That alone, you might not think, you might think you just talking to the police officer and you insulted him for 3 generations. You don't know, you know, even though it's the same language and in the same country.
Yeah, we are taught at the academy, because I remember going training at the academy in how to interact with persons from different cultures and in the different areas of Trinidad and Tobago, and how we approach them, how we understand them. Because I remember, like, one of these scenarios, the teacher was pretending to be mentally ill. So it was actors that came in, and one was pretending to be mentally ill, and his caretaker, and you had to interact with him, and you had to understand. It was difficult at first, but you had to understand that this person was a victim, and how to interact with them,
right?
And not just and you had to understand that without knowing that they were actually mentally ill, you had to decipher that. So you had to. So this is some of the training that we undertake, and community police officers are trained in how they interact with members of the public, and how they bring across the message they want the TTPS to bring across to members of the public.
You said something there, trained to interact with people from different cultures. One of the things too, of course, is we have a lot of Venezuelan migrants, amongst others, right? Not all of them speak great English.
No.
And of course, there will be some lawbreakers among them. So when a community gets new people, that might be, you know, you might suspect. Then it's new people from a different country that don't speak the language.
But
and the police can potentially, you know, if the community has fears, they can maybe go to you, and you all could look into it.
Of course, because we do on a regular basis, we do undertake training for different languages, like Spanish and Chinese. I would have have done Chinese. There are many of my colleagues that did undertook Spanish and whatnot, so that we could interact with other members of the public. And in cases where we don't have that knowledge, we actually liaise with the embassies in Trinidad for these different countries, especially the Venezuelan embassy. And we have had cases, including in Special Victims Department, where we've had victims that were from rural communities in Venezuela or the mainland South America, and they could not even speak Spanish. Their dialect was off. And we had to interact with, so we got the Venezuelan embassy involved in some of these cases. And they would have to bring in somebody that understood the dialect, that they weren't even speaking Spanish. So I think one of the terms was Warhoon or some rural, native language. And we had to, we had to communicate with the embassies, and they would have assisted us. So the embassies assist us a lot. Portuguese, because we have cases from victims from Brazil, in Venezuela, Colombia, and whatnot. And often than not, sometimes they even actually speak other languages as opposed to the native language that they come
of course,
from.
It's for community to try to decipher all of this.
It's very difficult.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it would be safer, because then now the police can say, listen, we spoke to them, this is the case, you know, it's normal people, and even potentially kind of communicate some of the basics of who these people are, so that the community can understand, or they might be fleeing this, or they might be looking for, you know what I mean? So that some amount of empathy and understanding could be there where it would have been hard otherwise.
Yeah, because our officers do want to go training on how to sympathize and empathize with persons who are victims of different crimes from different communities, even different cultures and languages and countries.
All right, I want to take a quick break. When we come back, we have some comments to get to, some on this topic and some from before. Stay tuned. This is Talking About Another Essential. Michael Swell, Christopher Arun of the TTPS. We'll be right back after this.
Remember waking up early just to catch your favorite cartoons? WESN brings back those magical mornings with Retro Saturdays.
Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born!
Where the young at heart relive the fun. Join us every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, only on WESN, the content capital.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry uncle. They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios. But they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Struggling with heart health or frequent migraines? Discover the simple steps to reclaim your energy and vitality.
We're diving into a topic that affects about 422 million people around the world. Diabetes.
Tune into Wellness Unlocked, the series that delivers expert advice, practical tips, and inspiring stories to help you take control of your health and well-being. Your health matters. Don't miss Wellness Unlocked. Watch now on WESN and take the first step toward better health.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God. So we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's been the victim, or the man who's been the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
All right, in the last 10 to 15 minutes or so, we have a couple comments to get to. Let's take them in order if we can, but it doesn't matter. All right, so the first comment. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the commenter was talking about because this statement is very true. All of the world systems are basically saying a few loopholes to plug and we will have no less fortunate society. The trick is the loopholes are in many systems, right? Now, I think one of the things I was talking about earlier, Chris, was with regards to the use of terrorism laws against criminals and the implications of that. But there are loopholes in financial things, there are loopholes in just about everywhere, right?
Well, of course, you know, I'm always working, even on a weekend.
Yes.
So this weekend I had.
You worked too hard.
Yes, I worked alongside the Customs Division this weekend here. And it was amazing. There are things I can't speak about, of course. But just these people work very hard. And the kind of work that they were doing and the kind of work they do is underestimated.
Right.
It's totally underestimated. And I was speaking to the supervisor and he was explaining to me the number of seizures that they have. And it's because of loopholes people try to breach.
Right.
They try to,
you know, Trinidadians are smart men and smart women, huh?
No, Sean,
You
I could not believe that Trinidad and Tobago had so many people trying to break these loopholes.
Yes.
Or use these loopholes, sorry, to break the law.
ICNTT laws are meant to be loopholed. That's what it is, right? And I think this is a very interesting thing that you brought up. Because the public's relationship or how customs engages with all the public leaves the public a very bad taste in their mouth, right?
Right.
But at the same time, like anything else, there are probably a group of people who are actually plugging away at the work, doing the hard work that has to be done.
I was amazed. I was like, you all work a lot harder than the police to some extent. And they divulged to me certain information I can't divulge to anybody. But it continues. It continues the method that the Trinidadians want to take to utilize these loopholes. It's amazing.
Listen, think about it, right? Think about it. Trinbagonians will go to the UK and America and not leave, right? So what is sending down something they're not supposed to send down in a container, right, compared to that? When you think about it, right, we smuggling ourselves over there. We're not going to smuggle some toy or some electronics or some whatever.
To be honest, it's beyond smuggling, but they are using loopholes to try to gain
you know,
some advantage.
Get some financial advantage over some law, customs or whatever. You think we're not going to do it on the reverse? It's whole people we smuggling up there, you know, ourselves. So, hey, let's go to the next one because this pertains to the last topic with regards to community policing. One of the things, of course, is what you can do to safeguard your own home. Now, the comment is basically saying, why should I spend tens of thousands to secure my home from intruders or my property? Shouldn't it be the intruders spending thousands in medical bills, legal bills, and losing their free time outside jail? To some extent, yes, except some of the things that we're speaking about, maybe a security system might be expensive. But a lot of the things that we're talking about doesn't have to be that expensive. Cameras might be, an alarm system might be. It all depends on how extensive you want to make it. Security lights are not tens of thousands.
No.
They're not.
No, and I've actually seen some very cheap camera systems. I don't want to call the name of the companies, but nonetheless, the very cheap camera systems were very vivid and clear to us when we were able to use them.
Because in the past, I would have said, like 15 years ago, I would warn people, hey, you buy a cheap camera, you can't see nothing, right?
But now
it's different.
It's totally different. I think the care and the interest should be paid in how you store the data.
Right.
Yeah, so that it could be retrieved.
But generally speaking, if you could keep data for 24 hours or maybe 5 days.
7 days,
7 days, that might be good enough, right? There's ways you could tweak it. It all depends.
Right.
But hard drives are not that expensive either. It might cost you a couple $1,000s, but again, if you're someone that doesn't have a TV, has a cheap Chinese phone or even something cheaper than that, you don't have an expensive car, I can understand being frugal. But if you have the ACs running, right? If you have some iPhone that might cost $6,000 or more, if you have big flat screen TVs and laptops and other electronic devices and cash at home and all of that, listen, it's not like you have to go every week to buy new cameras and buy new lights.
But there's a twofold effect, because you're investing in something that would protect you. To some extent, you're making yourself a harder target for criminals. Because criminals do scope out if you have cameras, if you have security lights, if you have a dog, if you have burglar proofing. So they do scope out these issues. The other fold of it is that it does assist the police when it's time to conduct investigations. Because we've done investigations where with arson, with kidnappings and whatnot, and we were able to expand the perimeter. And expanded the perimeter meaning that we were able to get CCTV footage from every avenue along the route that the criminals took. And we were able to backtrack up to where they met, and then they separated and went to conduct the job. So it's a twofold effect. It doesn't just protect you, it also protects other persons.
And think of it as a herd mentality. If we all have lights in the street and they have no shadows to hide in the darkness, when the police show up, it's going to be very obvious who they're there. And if we all have cameras, then there'll be a chain of evidence. Like you said, we could go, they jump from house to house, we could track them from house to house. And then when they have serious crime, as you say, you open up the perimeter, it's like the herd is wider. And you might say, why do we have to do it? Shouldn't the police do it? Well, hold on. I think at this point we do need to understand the state cannot pay to have cameras literally pointing at every house in the country, and at every street corner, and at every building, and at every business, and every alley.
And again, we saw the benefit of that when we looked at the Eagle Eye project in Tunampuna.
Yes.
During the carnival period last year, I think.
Right.
It was. And I brought it up. And how we were able to detect there was a shooting and there was actually a suspect that was looking into vehicles, and we were able to send a patrol down to that location and apprehend the suspect.
And I know I did agree with David Abdullah when he said stand your ground laws is putting the responsibility on the population. But a gun is more expensive than a camera, all right? And using a gun is a lot riskier than using a camera. And if you want to use a gun, you probably should invest in your own camera so you will have evidence as to what happened in order to give to the authority to say, hey, I was justified in shooting this person when I shot this person, assuming you don't break the law. So, but it's not the same, right? This is safeguarding yourself and doing what all citizens should probably do, right? And listen, I'm not saying you have to get cameras, but at the very least, have lights in your house so that you don't have shadows, right? Next thing you know, something happened, you need to, I don't know, open a window for some reason, open the door for some reason, you know, whatever. Someone has a medical emergency in the apartment next door, whatever. But you have these shadows where people could be just waiting for anybody to poke a head out and then make their way inside the house. You don't know if your own yard is safe at night.
There are blind spots.
When you have those blind spots, right? All right, let's take the next comment. Officers need to understand they work for the taxpayers, not vice versa. While that is true, the authority in the interaction is not with the taxpayer, it is with the officer. It has to be that way. The officers or the agents of the state, they have the authority with limitations based on the law and procedure. And as citizens, we do not have the right to question them up front, right? Even if it is obvious that the officer is doing the wrong thing, it is still not the correct thing to act defiant. Because, first of all, that basis of judgment is limited to what you know and see.
It's subjective.
Right? Next thing you know, the police have some operation going on, right? And they're trying to move you quickly. Or they're searching for someone, and look, at the end of the day, they're stopping a lot of cars in the area.
I want people to remember too, the law requires the officer to be courteous and stern. It doesn't mean stern. It doesn't mean he has to be outright courteous alone. He has to be courteous and stern to get his point across, to get the law across, for you to follow the rule of law. And again, as you said, if the officer has done something wrong or is doing something wrong, a court of law should deliberate on that. Yeah,
I remember there was a video where the officer did, I don't know what the final result was, and I could see where it looks bad. But on a certain level, because eventually he drew his gun on a female driver, right? Who was asking, what did I do? Why are you doing this? But yes, his tone kept increasing as she continued to not comply. But notice what he was saying. He didn't cuss out. He didn't use this courteous language. He kept saying, ma'am, and he kept repeating the command.
So he was courteous,
right?
Stern, yeah.
So he wasn't trying to say, woman, do this, that, blah, 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 blah. No, ma'am, whatever, put your hands in the vehicle, or whatever, whatever, whatever. Because like at some point, if you escalate the situation and are uncooperative, procedurally, the police now, you will have to, then your course of action changes, right?
Of course, yeah.
So, and that's the thing, just comply.
No, and we have seen clear cases of officers, I wouldn't say breaking the law, but being discourteous to members of the public, and we have dealt with it. But we continue to deal with it.
Right, but the point is, you trying to fight the officer in the moment.
No, it doesn't make sense.
It's not helpful.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Right? And listen, you don't know, you might end up with the one really bad apple officer. That's not the one you want to pick a fight with. We have Sanford on the line quick before we close the show.
Morning, show.
Morning.
Morning, Mr. ESP Arun.
Good day, good day.
Well, I see clearly Mr. Trump still continue to murder people in the Caribbean Sea. However, I see that they have similar interdictions going on in the Pacific, on the Pacific side of South America. But I see they have been apprehending those people.
And that's the problem.
So it tells you
the inconsistency, yeah.
Not only the inconsistency, as far as I'm concerned, Mr. Trump is disguising regime change and calling it trying to stop drug trafficking. But anyway, let me get to the real point I wanted to talk about. This issue with Mr. Meister's vacation leave. Yes, Aaron, I would like you to tell the commissioner that although this leak, and I understand when people disgruntled and how the leak how it may look. However, you have to start somewhere. If you're going to deal with this vacation issue in the police service, you have to start somewhere. And I have no problem with starting with Mr. Meister. I have no problem with starting it because you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. So I would like the commissioner to make this to let DCP administration make reducing the vacation leave of police officers a priority. Because, as I said before, you can't have all vacation was intended to, there's a scientific reason for vacation, it's intended to relieve stress of the job and that sort of thing. So, as far as I'm concerned, they need to reduce the leave and reduce the stress on the officers, because that's what it is too. Reduce the stress on the officers by starting a program. I mean, while they send him on all his leave, I don't expect that to happen with everybody, because that doesn't make sense. But you know how much leave they accumulate every year? Probably send them twice the amount, because the state is not going to buy out anybody's leave. The state doesn't have the funds to say we'll buy out the leave of the police service. That's not possible. So it is time that the administration part of the police service get the act together and try to make a concerted effort in trying to reduce the vacation leave of these officers, of you officers, I should say. Because I know, because I'm sure you have some leave as well, but you always working.
Some.
I know you have some as well.
Wait on Saturday. That's all you need to know.
So please let the commissioner know for me that, and the response of the commissioner, I didn't like the response because I know he felt he's on attack and he's trying to do the right thing. But it comes to the territory. So tell the commissioner, monkey say cool breeze. Relax.
Thank you,
Have a good day.
So I would even go further as to say one of the things, because it's slightly implied by how the commissioner framed it, right? There's an argument to be made. Well, we send ACP Meister on leave now, so that, because things seem stable now, right? He could be the first, and then as we send others, he will be available sooner rather than later, right?
Because Sean, I've been saying this a few times as well. Our leave has been taken away from us often.
Right.
Right?
How much leave you get a year? How many weeks?
It depends on your rank. It depends on your service and your rank.
Right.
So the junior you are, the less leave you get as opposed to how senior you are.
Which is funny because in a way the physical need for leave might be the reverse, right?
Exactly, yeah. So so that's why.
But it will be a few weeks a year, generally speaking.
Correct, yeah.
Right?
It's a good few weeks. But nonetheless, then you have to take into consideration we work holidays, so there's compensatory leave and whatnot, so it builds up. Then you have overtime that can't be paid, it builds up, it turns into leave and whatnot. So you have that, and then you have times of the year that leave is not allowed. So you have Christmas time, Carnival time, and then you have senior officers who are managers. And you may not want to, as he said, you don't want to send all of them on leave at the same time. So what you might actually be seeing here is the application of having some officers being sent on leave now. As he said, as he highlighted that it may be because things have settled down now. But there was a drive under Miss George, the Deputy Commissioner Admin, to send officers on their leave at particular times, and she has started to do that.
Okay.
This is just one of the highlights.
Because I mentioned it, like because of what the caller just said, for the same reasons of needing to recuperate and refresh, having a system, a new policy of cycling out leave, and it doesn't have to be all the leave at once. It could be a week at a time, days at a time. In fact, in some ways, especially for junior officers, that might actually maybe even better. You know, you get an extra day off here, an extra day off there, right? To kind of keep things.
So what they do, what they have been doing, based on what my observations have been, is that they do it with inspectors, they do it with other ranks. When they have accumulated too much leave, they send you on the leave.
Right.
So this has been happening for some time.
No, but what I'm saying is to have a system where, rather than letting it reach to that point, the annual leave, you kind of dispose of it in a structured way.
Right, so there was a structure. But however, because of crime at times,
and the SOEs,
they do have to do away with
I think part of it goes back to a manpower issue. Because at some point, if too many people are not available, right?
So the mandate, I believe the mandate is 15% of the TTPS can be on leave at one point in time.
Right, but I mean, during a state of emergency.
So that gets cut down, that gets curtailed. Even to fly out of the country, we need permission to still leave the country.
The point I was making earlier, this is something that if you want to prevent things that is happening and not have these public issues, right? A leader will present these plans up front, not now after the fact, say something that will then leave the rest of us saying this, that, or the other, right? And this is not just the Commissioner of Police, because you could get more egregious examples from politicians who are even less willing to communicate with us. Again, this is one thing. Do not underestimate just the fact that we have the media ambassadors here from the TTPS. We don't have media ambassadors from cabinet. We have a press conference, but it's not the same as getting regular interviews on all media platforms, right? It's not the same thing. It doesn't have the same level of engagement. So, and we don't get this from government entities or even private entities, because even in private entities, there's some responsibility the public depending, like financial institutions and the like. So, let's take the last comment. Please let us hear alternative positions on the same issues. Well, here's the thing. What is the alternative positions? America wants regime change? Here's the thing. We don't really have a lot of people going in deep in the conversation. I will say this. The Democratic senators that want to challenge Donald Trump positions reminded me something. Unless he's going to try to invade Venezuela with maybe a Marine division, and even then I don't think he has the authority to do that. It's one thing to deploy an MEU, 1 battalion. It's another thing to deploy a whole division. If he wants to have any major military action, regardless of terrorism or not, he's probably going to need an act of Congress. Otherwise, he's going to have a political, even if the law says he could do it, the political firestorm might be too much. Not a lot of Americans, he himself is anti-intervention, anti-involving himself in other people's business and putting American lives in harm's way. So he's probably going to need Congress to approve an act of war if he wants a regime change. And until then, he could maybe go after Maduro as an individual, but by my definition, and I believe to some extent by the definition of the U.S. War College Latin Americans professor, I can't remember the professor's name all of a sudden. Just taking out Maduro is not regime change. It's not necessarily going to do much of anything, right? Now, granted, that's not what the other perspectives are. It's about historical, what America does and how bad they are, and that's why we're going to get regime change. Not the conversation around it, or the conversation around the legalities of it, and why not, and etc., etc. So, to some extent, I haven't really seen anyone have much interesting takes beyond the usual narrative. And that usual narrative is so available, why am I going to bother with that here? Now, what Mr. San Fernando said, where that they are arresting people on the Pacific side, that's interesting. But I already did say, with Somali pirates, navies use police procedures to arrest. Police rules of engagement are not military shooting first and worrying about survivors later rules of engagement. They did that in Somalia. So already there's a precedent where we could contrast that with what happened with these boats that left Venezuela and say, why did this happen?
Yeah, but man, they also have exercises, military exercises by the U.S. Up and down the Caribbean at all times, including near Puerto Rico. They've been able to intercept vehicles or crafts and have major drug busts.
And that's the thing, like, because one of the things that there was an issue with was when they boarded a Venezuelan boat and people took excuse of that, but it's like, well, we just busted a marijuana smuggler, I think, that same week.
Yeah.
Like, almost at the same time, right? So, and this is where people are just going with the extreme, like 1 or 2 points of the extreme end of the narrative, right? The Prime Minister is not really helping, but it's supposed to be in theory about drug interdiction, which the US does, which we want, right? But that's being muddied by the fact that they're shooting missiles at these boats. So I understand the people who have an issue with the shooting at the boats and destroying them outright thing, right? But we're not necessarily juxtaposing that with, well, but we do have a drug smuggling issue, right? And the debates are being oversimplified. Let's take the last comment quick. Cameras can protect you from criminals. FEL can give you a chance against criminals. There's plenty of crimes during home invasions. The helpless retiree was raped, robbed, and murdered, so the police using cameras to catch perpetrators, not helping the murdered victim. At 7 I can still point a gun and shoot. Well, here's the thing. Utilizing a handgun is not as easy as you would think, right? So unless you're going to get a lot of training, and I would assume you're not accustomed to handling a gun, because it's one thing if you're an American who grew up around guns and used a gun since you were 10 years old, and so on, and then it's like second nature. 77, if you've never used a gun before, or even if you have some experience with a gun before, but not like Americans. You get into a gunfight, we've seen police officers lose that. Younger police officers who would have probably been more, hopefully, current in their shooting proficiency training, right? Keeping up their proficiency. So it's not automatic that, yeah, you could point a gun, they could point guns back. Who is going to win that gunfight? I fear it's going to be more civilians than criminals. But more importantly, look, people underestimate it. If there are lights and cameras, a lot of criminals will be spooked off.
Yeah.
That's just because they don't want that extra complication. They rather go
they
after
move on to an easier target.
The house in shadows is the easier target.
Exactly.
Right? So, and people who have guns generally know the value of having light, because if you can't see your target, then how are you going to hit them?
One thing to I want to encourage members of the public to do, we have technology now, like WhatsApp, form WhatsApp groups with your community so that you could transmit information easily. I'm part of some other groups, and we are able to transmit information very easily to each
Because
other.
last thing quick, a pistol, unless it's like something like a 50 caliber, even a rifle round, depending, it could be high pitched, it might sound a lot lighter than you might think. It's not the Hollywood, right? It could sound like a firecracker.
Yeah.
And if you just get a random 1-2 shots, depending, people might take it for granted. But if you have a way to communicate with the community, you could say, hey.
Everybody could be alerted.
Right? And people could ask questions, they have a way to ask questions, as opposed to, what happened? Anything happened? They see no movement, somebody fooling around with something. It's similar to when a car alarms go off these days. How many people take it seriously? Or a house alarm. A house alarm, I think, went off in my street, and I didn't know what to do. Was it a genuine emergency, or did someone's alarm just...
Right, but you should have called the police and let them know.
Well, that's the thing. First of all, I actually didn't even know exactly if it was a house alarm or not. I just didn't see a car, right? So it was an assumption.
Yeah. No, we could always send a patrol. So you call 999.
It ended soon after.
Right.
But I was just looking out in the window. I couldn't even identify where it was coming from. I didn't even know where to begin.
Right.
Right. Now, we have a community watch group, but I'm not engaged. I should be more engaged.
Yeah, you should. And that's the purpose, setting up the community watch groups with the community policing section so they could give you the advice and they could get all hands on board and they could have these groups formed, these WhatsApp groups and whatnot, and they could contribute a lot more to the wider population so that we could get a handle on the criminal situation, especially outside the lower murder rates. We could get a handle on the robberies, the home invasions, the larcenies and whatnot.
Now, to the commenter, if you want a handgun, I have no issue with that. I'm just saying it's not automatically going to be the silver bullet, and it's going to cost a lot more, right? And if you don't hit anything with the legally allotted ammunition you're allowed, it could get a little bit dicier after that. So with that said, I want to thank the SP for joining me once again. Thanks to the commenters for their contributions. I do appreciate the calls for more discussion on Venezuela, but I think ultimately it's one of those things where Karen has said it more than once. It isn't that developed yet. So I believe it or not, with all the communications going on and all of the shooting happening, we are still on some level in a wait and see mode legally, because we haven't actually seen anything progress legally or with regards to any serious treaties, negotiations, etc., etc. But still, thanks to all the commenters, thanks to Mr. Around calling in. This is talking about WSND Cognac Capital. Stay safe. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other.
Republic Day coming up.
Republic Day is coming up. Well, there was a whole other thing about a notice that was sent out and even reported by a media house about what may or may not have been cancelled from the Office of the Prime Minister and which island it was talking about. And so I won't necessarily go into that, but hopefully we'll have a good Republic Day.
Happy Republic Day.
Happy Republic Day, right? Not too sure if we're going to have celebrations or not, but have a happy Republic Day. Stay safe out there nevertheless. And especially on the roads, because
we'll be working, there'll be a number of roadblocks. So please behave yourselves
please
on
be
your road.
nice to the police and don't have no road rage with any random citizen, because when you height of traffic with schools that recently reopened.
Look out for some roadblocks.
Oh gosh, boy, why had I just hit people with that bad news? All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous